About committees, and just to remind everybody, when we talked about committees and we're going to fill committee positions, it was expressed by the council that we really didn't know enough about the committees, what they were, what their purpose was. So in order to help go through that, I have put together some information, and Rick has guided me through all this information, and I also want to acknowledge that Don Kenyon was very helpful in helping going into the back minutes to pull out when people actually got appointed here and there, and combining all that information together, I think I did a pretty good job. Anyway, so what I thought we would do is, you see, there's a sheet of paper for each committee, followed by the resolution that created that committee, or the section in the charter that created that committee, or the section in ORS, as in the budget, that created that committee. I've put down purpose where it was easy to do, and some I've referred to the actual resolution because it was a lot of information. As we look at these, I'm hoping that we'll just ask questions about what does that committee do? What purpose does it serve? Does it overlap with something else? And maybe we can talk about some of the examples that would happen in this committee. What would be referred to this committee for action? How would we as a council use this committee? Because ultimately that's what these committees are for our use, to help give us the opportunity to look at things more in depth, and then bring it back to the council for information and action if necessary, or sometimes just information. Just so that I can throw in another piece to that. We have these committees that are done by resolution. It does not prevent us from coming upon an issue, say for example, city safety. You're looking at that, a safety plan for, say, fires. Forest fires. It wouldn't prevent us as a council to be able to say, let's form an ad hoc committee of a couple counselors or one counselor and a few chosen people to look into this a little more carefully and report back to the committee, or report back to the council in 2 months what they've come up with. So we can use committees that way too. So think big.
One of the things I don't, is we used to have a safety committee, and it was with the police, we used to, and I see that's no longer here.
Well, I know, I ran in, and that's why I've got it on the top here, it says public safety, but I couldn't find, maybe, Chief, do you know, do we have a public safety committee?
We had one, but we haven't had anyone show up for months and months and months.
Okay.
I used to be on that committee years ago.
Okay.
So when it was really active was when I first started, and the counselors were Rita Clark and Christine Slavin.
Okay.
And since then it hasn't been as active.
So Rick, when I was looking through, I didn't find a resolution for the public safety committee, so there really wasn't one, was there?
There's none that I've ever seen.
And there's none you've seen too? So that, I was actually surprised at that, Dawn, too, when I was putting this together, because I put it on my list.
Because I was on that years ago.
And then couldn't find
Robert
anything
Bowe
on
was
it.
the counselor at that time.
So that is, as we go through these and see what the purpose is of all of them, let's also think about what additional committees you think should be there. I mean, I don't want to become heavy with all this, but at the same time, that's a very good point. Maybe we need to have it. Go ahead.
Since we're speaking about that real quick, I
Yeah.
just had a recommendation that we added that to administrative committee.
So that those duties
Would fall under administrative.
would follow administration.
Just because we haven't,
Okay.
there's been no one going there.
So can you give us examples of what that committee, well, let's see, have you met with it? No? So
Yeah.
what, can you give me examples of what that committee did?
Mostly we've just sat there and talked about public safety issues, whether it's police or fire.
Okay. Don, is that what you?
Well, years ago, it was, for instance, because of the speeding problem we had in town, we had the extra cars, and we used to put them, there was one set down by my shop, and it did slow down people in the counselors. That was one of the things we used to do. And it did help the community. It helped people that's flying through the town. It did slow them down. That was one of the things I thought was, it did a pretty good thing for slowing down the cars.
Don, do you remember if the committee was well, obviously you were a public member.
I was a public, Robert Moe was one of the counselors that was on it at the time.
Okay, so it was counselor and
And
public.
I probably have all the paperwork for that.
Oh, of course you do.
Well, I guess I'm a miser.
I know. So, so I'm just gonna make a note that that is possibly a committee that we can either merge in with the admin or recreate it and have it stand alone. So let me make a note of that. Okay, so the next, yes,
About the administration committee,
yeah,
so it has 7 voting members, which include 1 council representative to serve, who serves as chair, the city administrator, city recorder, and 4 citizens.
Correct.
If we look at maybe adding public safety, maybe we wanna add another counselor just to make sure we're really
Okay.
solidly represented
Okay.
here, since we'll have a bigger scope.
okay. Well, since administration is the next one we're gonna talk about, if it's going to include public safety, remembering that these are committees and that you don't want them to get too unwieldy, but at the same time. So for administration, I served on the administration committee for 2 years while I was counselor. I helped, we reviewed language for agenda items, just kind of reviewed general information that came into the city administrator to help get a different perspective and talk about those kinds of things. One of the things that we were just starting to do was charge administration committee with looking at at the code of ordinances and pulling all the ordinances that needed to be added to it, not adding them, but pulling them all together so we had them in preparation for the codification process that we'll go through hopefully in about 6 months and get it recoded. So it'll be some things like that. We've had other recommendations for the administration committee as far as looking at our council rules would be a good way to assign to them and then bring back as we begin to form them. So we could add public safety to this. I kind of feel like it should be separate, but we can start this way. No, I see a head shaking over there. You think it should be separate?
I think that, listening to what you just talked about, they're 2 different focal groups.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about some of the people that did, come to this meeting, we had some citizens that were concerned what happens if the dam broke, kind of thing.
Okay.
And is the city prepared, and, as we talk about wildfires and
Right.
those kinds of things, I think it would be appropriate to have them separate. That's my
Okay.
opinion.
Council,
I think it should be separate.
do you think it should be separate? I think it is. Okay.
If we can get involved with the citizens.
And that's the other thing, there is always that. We open them up to the public and say who would like to be on what, and
You
we're
might be
depending upon
surprised,
them.
there is a lot
Okay.
of people, I think.
All right, well, let's make sure that we make that as a recommendation. So admin committee, currently Rusty and Rick are on that. We have 2 more places that are available, and we still have those asks out and we'll appoint people. So admin committee, then the next one is the Oakridge Library. It's going great guns, they do great things, they're active. I personally don't think there's any changes or anything that we want to do to them, because they are the committee that stays going all by themselves. Any questions? Nope.
Is there
Cool with that?
openings on that? It was supposed to be 7, right?
7 voting members, and they currently have, 5.
I'm on that committee also. I came on the committee before it was, I can't remember the date. Georgie has it because I went on vacation, they put me in as the chair of the library board while I was on vacation.
See what happens
I'm
when
trying
you
to
go on
remember what date
vacation?
it was, I think mine is up in I think next year is 2020 is when I go off of it, so.
Okay. 2020. Thank you.
I noticed neither one of Rusty or the other one doesn't have any time, or they just didn't put it in yet.
It's new.
Well,
Oh, it's brand new. Yeah, and I'm sorry, you're right, I should have plugged that in and I didn't. They were, Rick, that was last October or something like that, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
last October.
Yeah,
We haven't held a meeting due to all
no,
the other things that are going on right now, but
yeah,
someday.
Yeah, I was on it.
and you were on it too,
Yeah.
weren't you?
I were, but I
You
was.
were,
I
you
was.
was.
I were.
So as we're
I don't
talking
think
about
I
these
can be,
committees,
though.
also let's talk about, you know, if you're interested in being the chair, if you're interested in being the council appointee. So, speak up,
I would be interested.
you would be interested in that?
I'd be into that.
Okay. Write this down.
But I also have an interest in the library board.
On being on the library board?
Uh-huh.
Okay, or the council rep for the library board?
I wanna be on the safety.
Okay. Okay, so the next one that we have on our list is Parks and Community Services. Rick, I don't know a lot about this other than what I pulled out of the ordinance. So can you give us an example of some of the things that they have done in the past or are doing?
So mainly this time they just, we review what the city's been doing, update them, and it's just another place for updating to the public. There really haven't been any products that came out of that committee other than discussion in another forum to, discuss potential.
How do you see it being used by council?
I see it being used by the council for, example, I'm hoping to get a recommendation from them to either approve or disapprove the National Park Service, grant.
Okay.
Well, not grant, but the outcome of that grant. I would love to see a letter written from that committee saying, yes, we like this, or, and that letter would of course go to you guys.
What is the community services aspect of that?
The community services aspect.
Aspect of
the public work pieces, so they get updates on the water project, they get updates on all the public work projects. There's yet to be any real products come out of that group in those aspects yet,
Okay.
so.
Okay, so do you think this committee would, as I was going through this and looking at this and thinking about community services, would this be a committee that would look at needs assessment as far as, so perhaps, senior citizen needs assessment,
Absolutely, yes.
preschool needs assessments, and things like that that were community service oriented? So can you think about, I mean, would that be appropriate to do?
That question has definitely come up in the group, and there has been a lot of members of the group that would love to pursue those.
Okay,
But I don't think that would be inappropriate. I'd actually encourage it,
okay.
especially if their desires to move those
Mhm.
forward will get better momentum.
And currently, we don't have any members,
No,
We
we
do?
do. We
cause
have,
I didn't plug any in here.
oh,
So that was my bad. Hello.
we need 3, I believe. And I
Okay.
don't have the agenda item from the end of last year that identified them.
Okay, well, I probably have it and I think I just skipped over it as I was preparing this. So we'll add them in here. Sounds like you think you have 3 more.
Wasn't this,
Sorry?
wasn't this committee was when they got to put the new parks in town? It was pretty active then, wasn't it, about 7, 8 years ago?
No, I can't answer this 7 or 8 years ago. I don't know, I'm not sure, I really don't know.
I believe it was
Okay.
really active then, that's why we got the parks and stuff.
Could be. Yeah. So, let me back up as far as no official product, because a couple months ago I requested signage for all of our parks. That is an example of something that came out of that committee. One of the committee members, we were talking about locations of possible disc golf baskets at Osprey Park, and I said, hey, meet me in Osprey Park. He says, I don't know how to get there. So, stuff like that, we
Awesome.
out of that meeting came, hey, we need signage to our parks, and then of course I brought it to you guys. So
Mhm.
that's an example of some of the products we've gotten out of there.
Mhm.
So
So can I ask, just typically with staff, and as much as you can answer this, would staff also bring information and say, hey, council, could you ask this committee to do X, Y, Z? I mean, if you ran into something that it seemed like, well, that would be really appropriate to have them look at that and give them, it's not a matter of giving them work to do, because our volunteers are valuable, and I don't wanna waste your time you know, we get to waste our time, but you guys don't. So,
No, but you want them to feel like they're appreciated.
but I want them to feel like
Oh,
they're
yeah,
appreciated and they
perfect.
have things to do without just making up things. So if committees were moving and active, that would be something that staff could also come to council and say, hey, this has come up, I'd love to see a discussion, can we
I
get
would not
this?
see a problem with that. I
Okay.
think that'd be appropriate.
Okay. Anybody interested in Parks and Community Services to lead? Well, I am, but, I mean, someone has to take something that I'm doing. Okay, all right, silence. All right, so, next one on the list is ODAC. Now, ODAC is a little bit different creature. It has a new resolution that is just created. They are created to advise the council and the city, and city staff, about economic development, both in the city of Oakridge as well as the industrial park. They have, rules that are a little bit more stringent than the other committees. They ask for participation from members that have experience or some kind of experience in business, economic development, accounting, I mean, that kind of level of knowledge. Because they do deal with potential developers, potential investors. There is a little bit more, currently their guidelines show that they are not a public meeting because much of what they deal with is private and sometimes very confidential. So there is that aspect to it. They currently have a 5 to 7 member list that they can do. They're currently at 5, not 2 4s.
I was looking at that. Kevin Gobelman used to be on there when he was before he was a councilor, and when he was a counselor, he should have dropped off of there, and I see him back on there, but reading it, they can just borrow people.
Yes, they can ask people to come ad hoc.
Yeah.
So, and I think the reason that they did that is there are times when a potential developer or investor may come and there is a member of the community that has expertise in that area. And so it makes sense to be able to say, would you like to join us for this conversation so we could get some feedback from you? And so they've left themselves flexible. I see a thumbs up back there from Rick. I did a good job, right? Yeah,
Yes,
I did.
you're doing great.
Okay, good. So that's there. There is no council representative on this, is there?
No, the interesting conversation that we had, and it never got resolved, was, the idea was that what we determined since then is we think that these meetings are gonna be open up until the time we start discussing confidential issues.
Right.
And my desire was to I think I talked to you about this, that we would invite a counselor randomly to attend these meetings, and then of course, once they go to the confidential side of the meeting, everybody leaves except the ODAC members who are privy to the specific issue we're talking about.
Right.
And so my take is I still wanna do that. I still wanna invite randomly someone to come and sit in public as well.
So that's a good point.
I actually give Rick the bylaws of the ODAC committee when it originated, and it's quite interesting if you read it. It was, it had a lot of that, what you guys are trying to do, it was in that original bylaw.
Right.
He has it.
And those are the bylaws that they use to recreate, to do this.
Yeah, the building,
To build it.
original.
So-
Yeah, when we rewrote it, we wrote it using, I call it the posted page of ODAC, which looked like just.
And Post-it notes all over it.
Photocopy. And so I rewrote it, got it approved by our group, and then we sent it up to the council.
Right, and then they passed it. So, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something about, as far as council participation in this, I've sat on the ODAC committee, all last year.
Yep.
And, I think there should be council there. But my concern is rather than having a rotating counselor, because you really have to be able to follow the the procedure. If you're just popping in, then really what you've done is relegated counselors to, you know, visiting kangaroos. And I don't want that. I would rather, in my opinion, have a counselor appointed to attend. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, well, and to some degree, I agree. I think that maybe in the first year of your sitting up there, my original intent was to have each and every one of them eventually sit in a meeting so they would all know what we do, because it's like a secret society or something. And so in order to really get a feel for what we're doing, if the counselors rotated through at least for the first 6 meetings, you would all have a really good feel of what we do up until we start discussing specifics.
Right.
You would have a really good idea of what we do, so when you sit up here and we eventually bring a company to you, you all know what we went through to get that company to you. So there's no surprise.
Okay.
I have 20 years of that
You don't need
ODAC committee. I'll go on the ODAC committee, I'd be the one, I'll go on it.
Okay. Bobby?
So maybe it's worthwhile assigning one of us to it, but then also, in addition, having each of us at least go and participate at 1 meeting or 2 meetings to learn.
I like that.
If one was on there and then another one.
Yeah.
So assign a rep and then have a rotating counselor so that they could go in and listen and see what it's about
And learn.
and learn.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I have no feelings.
Good.
No.
Good answer.
That's fine. However
Excellent.
you guys wanna do it. I
Okay.
just would like you guys to get there off and on so you can see what we're doing.
I mean, to give you a little bit of information about our.
And Dawn, you said you were interested in doing that?
Yep.
Okay, I'm making that note down. So I do wanna make sure that you all understand that, I am laying down what your preferences are, but this is one of those things that I actually get to decide as mayor, so just, there you are. I do take chocolate chip cookies.
Wait, the attorney still.
I know, the attorney didn't hear that. Okay, planning commission. As you know, the planning commission is established by charter. That's not, anything that is a resolution. It's also one of those things that we are all aware of that we cannot participate in, because there may be something that is done in the planning commission and a decision that's made that will come to us as an appeal, and we have to be able to listen to the appeal and rule on it and not have to excuse ourselves because we were part of the process.
Yeah, because it would be ex parte contact.
That is the word I was looking for.
So then who's the representative that brings the stuff to us from these?
From the planning commission?
Yeah.
So the planning commission is required to report to, quarterly. The planning commission is required to report to the council quarterly. They come and they report any of the activity they have done that has already concluded and the time has passed for an appeal. They can't report anything to us that still is within the appeal timeline, because then, once again, we have information that we're not supposed to have ex parte contact. So they do come quarterly to let us know what's going on. So while it's frustrating as a counselor, I remember being a little bit frustrated. It's like, well, I know this is going on. How come I don't know anything about it on council? Well, it's because the planning commission is taking care of it. And it hasn't gone past that time limit for us to be reported to officially.
But if these people on the planning commission, if things that they have approved came to the council and it's not being approved, then us as a body should go back, get it done. Like
Explain that.
certification, for instance, the marijuana place next door to me is supposed to have fencing and supposed to be completely secured, and it still isn't after the period of time that it's been
Then,
here.
no, that is code enforcement. You would go to,
Well, since it would be planning commission, I think it would be a combination between.
Right.
Yeah.
the two.
but you would never go to the planning commission, and council would never direct the planning commission.
Correct.
And we would just go through,
Right.
city
Because if it hasn't
administrator.
been done, then it needs to be done.
Right.
And then,
Compliance.
in those regards, especially with that, because that has an initial use permit, the only things outside of ordinance 874 that we can enforce is things that are a condition placed upon a conditional use permit.
Right.
So,
Okay, so there is no council assignment for the planning commission. Okay, so, next we come to the budget committee. The budget committee is established by ORS. We're gonna be, we're all on the budget committee. Woo-hoo! So be prepared.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, oh boy,
And
here it
so how-
comes.
So we gotta have 7 and 7, so we're gonna have to be 14, right?
Correct. Actually, there'll be more than 14 because we'll have the city administrator there, and department heads will be there. So, yeah, there'll be a lot more people there than just
We have a
14.
But there's
list of-
7 and
Are
7.
these
It's
the
gotta
only
be
people
equal.
that are still
Yes.
on it?
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
it's gotta be equal, not the staff and the rest of it.
And Don
Just
brings up a
gotta be
good
7 and
point. If for some reason a council member says, I cannot attend any of the budget meetings because of XYZ, then we have to adjust the number of public too. It has to stay balanced. And yes, so we know these 3 people were on it, and,
All right, yeah.
I need to contact them to see if they're still willing to continue, because there is a term
Yeah.
that they, do, and it's 3 years staggered. So Rick, yours is up in 2020, are you gonna stay on?
Yeah,
Okay, so you're an okay. And I am gonna check with the 2 other individuals that are already here, and it is still posted for planning, or for budget committee.
Yeah, so how many are we gonna, Yeah.
So we have 4,
4.
yeah.
yeah, there's 54 of them.
It's a problem for me, probably. What, you have a quizzical,
I do, because I thought that with budget committee, it was, 3-year terms, 3-year terms with a number leaving every year.
yes, staggered.
So is it gonna be 4 this year? I guess it would have to be, sorry. And somebody on there would have to be a staggered year.
Yeah, so, so these are, you're right. So Rick says 2020, James Walker says 2020.
Yeah.
So I'll have to go back and look at that.
Well,
Okay.
the other ones, we have to be 3, so, well, one will have to be 21 and one will have to
Okay.
be 22, right? So
I'll
you're
go
gonna
back and
stagger
review.
when we add them to the,
And see
Yeah.
when, who,
Just
what,
so
where,
every year there's
3 or
somebody
4
new.
year term, doesn't
right,
4 of them.
in a rolling term,
Yeah, see, Dave would be gone this year, then him,
right.
well, I don't know how they got the 2 of 2020.
Well, that's what I was saying, is I'm gonna have to go back and take a look and see when and who was appointed. So that's one of those committees that we really need to start doing seats, seat 1, seat 2, seat 3, so we know if someone pops off of it and says, I can't do it anymore, that if you're filling that seat, you may not have a 3-year, it may only be a 1-year.
Can I have both seats out there on there?
No.
You're already on there.
Okay,
Been on there.
Rick, is this about your position?
It's about the budget committee. At the last year's budget committee meeting, there was a request to, I believe Jim Cree at the time, that we get an earlier warning about the budget meetings start earlier in the year,
Yes,
because we ran out of
we
time.
ran out of time, and we're gonna get going on that shortly.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for the reminder. So the next is the RTMP. So that's the Rural Tourism Marketing Program and Advisory Committee. So we have a formula for RTMPs that we apply to those that in the community that apply for RTMP funds. This committee reviews the applications to see that they meet the requirements, and then uses the scoring system that has been developed. Sits as a committee. I think we met twice last year, Susie.
Yeah, we did meet twice.
Yeah, we did meet twice. I'm not sure why, but we met twice. So there are 7 voting members: the mayor, council chair of the admin committee, the council chair of the community services committee, finance director, city administrator, and then 2 at-large positions from the public. We have yet to fill that. RTMP doesn't need to be determined until mid-March.
Yes. The
Okay.
RTMP packets will be posted on the web probably within the next week or so, and I've actually had a couple people ask, because they're gonna be out of town, if I could email one. I said if they email me the request, then I could email them the packet.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So that's coming up. And so after that, what I have included in here, so let's stop for a minute. So if you go back to the review of committees agenda item page, in here I've also listed at the bottom, I also included the TSP committee, and that's a committee that Rick has put together for the transportation, what's the S?
Entry system plan.
Transportation system plan. And he has a list to add to your, I hope that you'll all keep this, so that you know what committees are what. So he's adding another piece of paper about the TSPs. And I believe he has a request for a council member.
Yes, Councilor Goldman was previously on here, and I needed a new council member for this. Our next meeting is in March.
Okay, anybody interested in the TSP?
Don attended the last
Are you
meeting.
nominating Don?
I am. And he had plenty of questions and a lot to say, so.
Is it?
it might be a good fit.
That's pretty good, actually. Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
I still wanna be on the same
yes. Okay, Don.
Yeah, and I am on this through my employment.
Yes, you're here already, not as a counselor, as a different hat.
Yes.
Okay. So at the bottom of my little spiel here, in addition to the committees that are established by resolution, counselors are asked to consider service on the following outside of Oakridge committees. LRAPA and LRAPA budget. I know, but we are on this, and so we can't shirk. I serve as on the board of LRAPA. We need an LRAPA budget person. I think I sent out an email to all of you pleading, begging. Only heard a no from one, so that means I have 4 possible yeses, right?
I can give
Okay.
you no.
Okay, also Lane Act, they meet monthly. The Mayor's Roundtable, that I attend that. The Southern Willamette Forest Collaborative, I'm actually on the board of that, although it wouldn't hurt to have a council member attend if they were interested. I don't know a lot about this Fibers Consortium, Rick.
I don't either.
Okay, this is something I know that Mr. Gomez attended, but I don't know much about it at all. And I will confess that for a whole year, I couldn't figure out why he was attending something to do with textiles. This is about telecommunication fibers, so there you go. I know you could have, but it took me a whole year to figure it out. What?
The reason that's on there is because years ago, I don't know if anybody's lived here that long here, but they tore up along the highways and they put in fiber optics.
Right,
We own part of that fiber,
okay,
sort of.
sort of.
So, yeah, sort of. All of it has not been lit, but because we gave them some land and they have some access to, some of the hubs for that, and I'm not using the correct terms because this is not my area of expertise, we have a position on that board.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of get to decide when some of it gets lit up or how much. There's a little bit, that's why that's on there. It has to do with that.
So will they reach out and contact us when there is a meeting to be coming? Who should I reach out to?
I'm assuming that Phil will probably get that email because all of those went to the city administrator one. So that's
Okay.
on that one.
Okay, thank you, Susie. And then, go ahead.
Maybe that one is something that we can just assign to the city administrator in general.
We could.
Yeah.
We could,
Whoever our city administrator is on that board.
okay. And then also the Small Cities Forum. That's open quarterly to any counselor who wants to attend. Stan and I are actually going to it tomorrow. That's a luncheon up in Philomath. Hopefully we're not gonna get snowed on, right?
No.
No snow until 4.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are gonna be going to that.
I wanna go back to the LRAPA committee. Now, this is
Yes.
the budget committee?
LRAPA board, I'm on the board, and LRAPA budget. LRAPA budget committees, I think they begin meeting in March, and go through like the end of April. And they told me 4 to 5 meetings during that time period, depending on how quickly they get through all of the budget. And it is actually, I was in for some of them last year. I would like to say that I understood everything that was going on. I did not, because I am not a numbers person. I know how to do my checkbook and my taxes. So, look at you smiling.
Think about it a little.
Okay, you think about it.
I
I
don't
have to
tell
have
you
it, I
tonight,
have to have a
right?
decision on that by mid next week.
Oh, yeah, I'll figure out by then. I gotta figure out how much
Okay.
budgeting I wanna do.
Yeah, cause I can't do both.
Why
Yeah,
not?
I just can't do both. Yeah, yeah.
That hard.
Well, it's just a lot of time. I mean, as it is, I go into town
just
too many
kidding.
times. Okay, good, you're kidding me. Thank you.
A
Okay.
question,
Yes.
actually for Sam, what's your background in?
For what?
Looking at all
She's
these
fishing for committees.
I'm looking at some ideas and some.
Are we talking the committees here or throughout the day?
I think all of them in general, but, I mean, like,
Don't look at me, I don't want any more.
so, I don't know if you have an accounting background in any
I
way, or
don't.
management, what's your background, and what would you feel comfortable with?
Probably parks.
Sounds good. It's yours. You got it.
That wasn't hard. That wasn't hard.
No.
Okay. Chrissy, what are you mulling around over there? Anything?
Probably between, I was actually interested in ODAC,
Okay.
Are any of these committees need more than one counselor?
No, they could, I suppose.
Okay.
They haven't.
I
But-
would say ODAC, TSP, and LRAP are my interests.
She's trying to take your job.
You were just complaining. Why are you
Yeah,
complaining again?
I mean, I would be thinking we would be saying woohoo for El Rapa and El Rapa. Thank you guys. Let's see.
What was the one you mentioned, Lane Act?
Lane Act.
Yeah, what is that?
Okay, do I should forward you this email. It meets monthly. Lane Act is a group that of movers and shakers and the communities in Lane County. It meets at ODOT in Springfield in the ODOT offices. It has a money component to it that comes. I don't know, I've only attended one meeting so far, and I can say that the meeting itself is pretty darn amazing to listen to all of the people who are in attendance, who know everything about there is to know about trains, bridges, roads, how to get money out of the state, which I think is pretty remarkable in itself. And it takes a while to get up to speed with it. I wish I could tell you more about this. I didn't bring I'm looking to see if I have the email. It was just sent out, from, hold on, give me a second here. Denise, there it is. Denise Walters. Loading, doing it, almost there.
It's the Lane Area Commission on Transportation, so
Thank you, dear.
that's what it
That's,
has to do with.
yeah,
pretty much
so
is that.
expand all those words and, that kind of gives you an idea, but anything to do with transportation. So on the agenda coming up, they're gonna talk about ODOT updates, Metropolitan Policy Committee updates, Lane County and Metro Planning Organization and Safety Plan implementation, LTD Transit, State Transit Network and Fund applications, legislative previews, it is riveting, and how to enhance the enhancement projects. Now, the projects are the things. I think a couple meetings ago I may have mentioned that I was at a meeting, and what I discovered is that we get a pool of money for safety for roads. Highway 58 is one of the most unsafe roads in Lane County, not to mention Oregon, and yet we are getting the smallest percentage of that money. And so you can imagine that I raised my hand and said, I may be new to this, but it seems to me that if we have the most people killed on our road, shouldn't we also get the most money? And they went, whoa, 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 whoa. So, it's that kind of thing. But that's what that is about.
You get that a lot.
Yeah, I'm learning governmental talk.
I see your names is on the planning commission, you put in here as a witness, as a citizen.
On on which one, what are you looking at? TSP?
Oh, Rick just came up.
Yes, the TSP. And
He's
this
on
is the budget
Yeah,
committee.
he's on the budget committee for citizens, is that?
And this is the TSP.
Right, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So he's actually, he's good for the budget on that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So he's alive and kicking, and I should be able to keep him on the budget because of that. Right?
I seen him there the other day.
Okay, sounds like a great idea. So does that give you, do you feel like you've gotten enough information, a little more thorough understanding of what our committees are, so that we can go back and review the people who applied as well as those who may have applied since we opened up the application? further?
When?
So that, what, whoa.
I'm sorry, as a
Okay.
citizen, I don't
Sense.
believe you've reopened any of the committees.
They should, all of it should have been extended. And that does not appear to have happened to you?
No, I believe you were gonna wait until after this meeting before anything got posted.
Really?
Is it, maybe,
No,
is
I'm
it
wrong.
posted?
Oh, I'm wrong. Okay,
No, they're not posted.
okay, well, will we do that then, like ASAP then? So that anyone else who wants to apply, since we have empty spots, can do that?
We've been accepting applications as someone brings them.
Oh, we have? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
You didn't close them, so they bring them in, we put them in the slots.
Okay, good, good.
Meeting for charter review?
No, we haven't, that's the next topic, charter review, thank you. Rick,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not supposed to call on anybody.
Yeah, I know. LCOG, our ex-mayor used to go to those meetings.
Yes.
Attended them every month.
Yes, Lane Council of Governments, it's on that list, I forgot, I didn't say it, and yes, I am attending. I am attending LPUG. Yeah, I do have to. So good, thank you.
What's the, small cities forum?
So it is run by the League of Oregon Cities, and there is a small cities network, and they move around quarterly. Well, no, our small cities network, I don't know where exactly it's Southern Willamette. Is that right? Southern Willamette. They get together quarterly to discuss issues that are intrinsic just to small cities, and they usually have a speaker. It rotates and is hosted by the different small cities. We haven't hosted it for a while, so we probably will think about doing that coming up.
Yeah, I might be interested in that.
Okay, good. Well, that's what we're gonna attend tomorrow. And we'll see how it is. You can give me your feedback on that. Sweet. Charter. Okay, so the first step to that is getting our code of ordinances together. We have a charter review that we want to start. It has been recommended, and I think we need to have we need to at some point when we get the chance to have normal meetings, have a conversation, and yes, that was a dig. Anyway, we have a conversation about how we want to go about doing the charter review. And I think we need to have that conversation with our city administrator. I have never gone through a charter review, and I know there's probably about 5 hands that are gonna pop up in here and say, I have.
I can pop mine up.
I know you were, 2. That's all. Sweet. So, I don't know the process of that. I know that Lane Council of Governments, or the League of Oregon Cities can assist us with that, and the charter review and the process, and looking into it. I don't think we're ready. This isn't gonna be, it's my understanding and the recommendation that I have received from both the League of Oregon Cities and the city administrator is that this is not an open, anybody sign up for. This is a group that is convened by the council, and then the council chooses 1, 2, 3 people from each person. Each person can choose one person to sit down on this, rather than just an open, anyone can come to it.
So basically, we would invite people to participate that we know would be a good fit for that.
Yes.
Okay.
And review it. Anything that has to be done on the charter, of course, has to go to the voting public. This isn't something that can be done because we get to do it. It has to have their stamp of approval also. So I don't know much more about it than that. I know it's been ruminating around in my head for a while, but I haven't gotten further.
And when we get to that, I would definitely be interested in that, because when I worked at DOJ, a lot of the stuff I did was work on legislative committees
Right.
and legislative review. and then, implementing new laws and setting policies and procedures around that. So,
I think it goes, after we do it, look at it, and it's gotta go to the attorney for approval.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
That's
It'll
been
be a
the whole
process.
problem is-
What I was told is this takes a year, you know.
I'd live it.
It takes a year. You wanna do it carefully and with lots of different review.
You wanna map out all your laws and how they intersect and.
Absolutely.
All the words, it's not, it hasn't been used right.
Exactly. So, Dawn, you have your hand up.
There is an ORS statute that defines what a charter review committee does,
Okay.
and it actually is very open to the public and can be done completely by the public without council,
Interesting.
just so
Okay.
you know.
Thank you. Like I said, this is all something new,
Well, it's the people.
and I'm just regurgitating things that I've heard. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just letting you know it's out there.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay. So now that it's open, we have on February 21st assigned to assign people who have volunteered to the committees and approve them and that type of thing. I do want to bring up, and I think I'm going to bring it up, but I think I already know the answer. There are some people who have applied for committees who are unable to be here. And, the question arose, well, we really want to be interested, but we just can't be here that meeting. Can I still serve? And if I'm not mistaken, the charter says no.
Right.
They have to be present, and it's in the charter. It's not in the ordinances. And I don't know that there is, and forgive me for saying this, any way around that.
So if there's a way for a counselor to participate by phone in the meeting, why couldn't we allow that?
A
Under that
participation by
circumstance,
phone.
can we look into that option?
Rick, you think that's a good option? Is that the person can follow it? So the other question would be, could the applicant have a proxy? So, would that be a violation of charter? Would we be stretching it too much to say they could have a proxy?
Doesn't say that it can't, so since it's
Right.
not addressed, if the council wanted to get consensus that it could have proxies, then they probably could.
Okay. Okay, so remembering that we can't vote on anything right now because we're in work session, it's something for you to be thinking about, and we will bring up again when we can vote so that we can do that.
So will we be able to bring that up again to vote on before we're looking at filling those vacancies?
If I get a consensus from the council at a work session, is it valid enough to communicate to the public that that is what we will do and then vote on it on the 21st?
You get a if you have a consensus, then remember consensus is everybody has to nod their head up and down. At
Okay.
that point, then at your meeting, you would announce that you are allowing it, you wouldn't necessarily have, that you're gonna allow proxies to appear for people at those meetings.
Before I have that consensus on the 21st though, would I have the legitimacy to inform the public that they can do a proxy and they can do a phone in? Rick?
Was that a stretch from what was on our agenda?
What?
As far as that decision?
Is that well, it's part of the committee process, and I just
Fair
want,
enough. I
yeah,
thought of that.
thank you for bringing that up. Because
So we have a meeting next week.
13th, that's for the,
yes, we do, and we can tack a business piece onto that and be able to vote. That way we won't have to get me in trouble.
There you go.
And we'll have time to research it a little more and have a
Okay.
definitive answer.
That sounds good. So will you make a note of that on the 13th? We'll add a business section, business piece to it.
Keep people out of trouble.
Thank you.
Good idea.
Good job, council.
Well, I don't wanna do ethics complaints.
I don't want to see your ethics complaint. Okay, good stuff. All right, so let's move on to the code of ethics. We as a council adopted a code of ethics by ordinance, and I'm gonna have